Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 4140, sub 3, and within such time that the business committee may determine, debate on the motion shall stand adjourned for not less than 3 days. I direct that part of the budget.
All right, NNT Sabri Yebemu Akwaba.
Speaker, I so move.
Order. Order. Honorable Minority Leader.
Speaker, very well, as guided by you, I'm familiar with the rules of this House. And pursuant to Order 140, it's only natural that I perform that simple task of seconding the motion for adjournment. But, Mr. Speaker, having listened to the Finance Minister, whose revenue after paperless is 35% compared to the Vice 56% of revenue. Mr. Speaker, we have heard his shopping list of realizable and unrealizable pledges and promises. A challenge weight bill with additional 100,000 jobs for graduates. Very welcome. He has not inherited, but has provided electricity. Order. No, he's done. Mr. Speaker, this is
Honorable Majority Leader. Do rise.
Minority Leader.
Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker.
Some of your colleagues on my left side.
While we're bringing you the budget for 2018. Let me go through some of the key things he talked about. Now, he said. So we're expecting to see an overall GDP growth of 6.8% for 2018. For the non-oil GDP growth, 8%. Average inflation rate is looking.
Order. Honorable Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we have seconded the motion.
Coverage of the 2018 budget here live from Parliament. So just a while ago, you had the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, actually presenting the 2018 budget from an Asempa budget he called last year to the Ejuma budget. So a quick recap in terms of the macroeconomic target. More of a moderate economic growth, 6.8%. Let's look at revenue. They're looking at somewhere around 51 billion Ghana cedis. Expenditure around 62 billion Ghana cedis. Inflation end of year about 8.9%. Deficit still within the program 4.5%. They were quite heavy on tax incentives, despite the fact that India promised that they might be a little bit slow with respect to taxes that they will actually give out to businesses and all those things. Now, in terms of the electricity tariffs, they've also announced, or he also announced, that there will be some recommendations to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission to actually reduce tariffs, looking at between 11% to as much as 21%. And if this proposal is actually accepted by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Also, in terms of taxes for those low-income earners, there will be some reliefs given to them in terms of taxes being paid on your income. Also, in their efforts to encourage businesses to actually pay their taxes, there will be some reliefs or some actually given to these businesses in terms of more of voluntary contributions, so that those sanctions that are given to businesses that delay in paying their taxes, they might also waive it. The minister also spoke about the fact that there would be an educational fund in addition to the GET fund to support the funding of education. Why is he doing this, or why is he saying this? Well, he says that there have been some proposals from some development partners who want to actually support our educational program. And basically, the fact that it's believed that this educational fund will actually complement the GET fund as well. There were other initiatives announced in terms of de-risking the agricultural sector. You know, the one thing that has faced the agricultural sector in terms of getting the required funding is about the risky nature when you go to the agricultural sector and all those things as well. So these are some of the things that the minister has been highlighting in the 2018 budget, call it getting Ghana to work, or in the local language, they'll talk about the fact that Ejuma budget. But my colleague Odelia is in the public gallery in Parliament. And Odelia, over to you for whoever you have over there in terms of picking his or her thoughts on the 2018 budget.
Chief.
Government shouldn't be in the business of employment, but it looks like there's a lot of employment that has been mentioned in the budget, and that's quite worrying. Can they deliver on this?
You see, that is another aspect. On the other hand, the same government is crying for compensation, high levels of compensation, and at the same time we want to employ. I think the private sector government mix is the discourse is not yet properly aligned, and I think that maybe with time they'll be in a position to streamline that. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. So I want to find out from you exactly what you think about the budget.
This is more of a fantasy budget, a budget that doesn't appear pragmatic in any way at all. If you start by looking at the theme of the earlier budget, sowing seeds for jobs as we had in early 2017. If we look at the Asempa, so-called Asempa budget that was a mid-year review budget, as against what we have today, you could see clearly that there is no correlation in the themes for this budget.
But it's not just about themes, it's about delivery.
Of course, it reflects in the delivery. It manifests clearly, form and content. And I'm coming right to the content. It is just unsustainable in a situation where, particularly, I took a few notes in some of the things that were delivered. In a situation where, one, we have a high arrears that we are unable to meet. In a situation where we have increasing debt stock. As at the beginning of 2017, the national debt stock was around 122 billion. As of June, it had increased to 138 billion. So at a time when debt appears to be increasing, and where we have a situation where in 2018, we are talking about a budget deficit exceeding 10 billion, and where government is proposing to finance this debt through, local financing, through our local banks of about 70 and over %, where we are crowding out the private sector from borrowing. We are increasing expenditure by way of talking about 100,000 jobs. We are talking about decreasing, of course, electricity bills. Who would not appreciate decreasing electricity bills? But you could tell clearly that in a situation where revenue appears to be going down, where we are not able to meet annual revenue targets. We saw what happened last year in the mid-year review, where budget revenue was reduced by about 1.1% over. And then we are having a situation where government is unable to sustain expenditure. Now, look at NIB and Exim Bank. We are talking about developing and having a national development bank. When we have NIB, we have the Exim Bank, and we are talking about.
So for you, it's basically a couple of duplications.
Duplications. Beyond that, we have the Agri Development Bank, and we have a budget talking about Exim Bank to grant agri credit. I think that this is a very confused arrangement, and we need to delve deep into this budget. I'm rather very disappointed. This is a very fantasy budget. It is an unpragmatic budget. It is unrealistic, and we are just tickling ourselves and laughing.
Well, we're handing over to George Riafe. We would be right back here at the public gallery to be discussing more with a few more dignitaries.
So welcome back to Parliament for our coverage of the 2018 budget. A while ago, we had the Finance Minister present the budget, which he christened as the Ejuma budget, getting Ghana to work. Let's get the minority view on it. Mr. Wakilu, he is a member of Parliament for Damango. You raised several questions before this presentation. Are you not satisfied with those policies that government has outlined to help consolidate the gains and then grow the economy?
Thank you very much. It's evident that this budget is a Wahala budget. It's a 419 budget. Per the statistics it has given, you'll realize that this year, 27, he was choosing and picking. And that tells you what we are heading towards in 2018. For example, if you say there's a real GDP growth of 7.8 and you go and pick June figures, then there is a problem. Because that is about 4 months away. At least a budget should capture from September onwards.
That the current government is saying that it's going to be a grant. It's never going to be a grant. But let's hope that such monies will come into the country to enhance whatever program that the government has for the people.
So, in general, what do you think about this budget that is putting Ghana back on track?
Well, every budget is an attempt to put Ghana back on track if we sort of derail. I think this particular budget is very ambitious. There will be few challenges, and basically there will be more challenges than before. But certainly, I believe that the people of Ghana are looking at a budget that will serve the people, not the people serving the budget, as the economy, as we've known. So let's look at a budget that is going to provide us the opportunity, provide the people the opportunity of the economy serving the people, but not the people serving the economy.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of tax cuts, especially when it comes to the energy sector. There's a lot of promise of employment. 100,000 graduates, students who have graduated from the university are going to be employed. Should government be leading the employment drive when we're having serious problems with public sector wage bills?
I think what government has to do is actually making sure that the private sector has the conducive kind of environment to employ. 100,000 is quite ambitious up to the year 2018. It's very, very ambitious. Let's hope they achieve that target. That is why I put it in a nutshell that this is a very, very ambitious, budget. There will be too many challenges, but certainly we are looking at an economy that is going to serve the people, but not the other way around, people serving the economy. So let's hope that it will happen. But I think that government should rather make sure that the private sector has the conducive environment to making sure that they employ more.
All right. Okay, so I think I've got some more people to talk with. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're welcome back to our coverage of the 2018 budget, and we have the former chair of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Mr. James Kloche Aveji. Thank you so much for joining us here in our budget coverage and budget watch of this one that was done by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. You have christened this budget 419. They are saying that it's a Juma budget. What is the basis of your view on this budget that it's 419? That's a serious allegation, some would say.
It is 419 because most of the initiatives that have been indicated in the budget, this government will not fulfill them. Just as the 2017 budget, where a lot of things were said, where they have decided to choose and pick those easier ones. And so all that they have said in this budget is just a repetition, a rehash of the 2017 initiatives. And that is why we christen it a 419 or Ohala budget. Because Ohala, in the sense that it's tightening the expenditure where the revenue is coming to, the estimate is about 52 billion. The expenditure is also around 62 billion, giving you a deficit of 4.5. This year, the deficit is 6.3, and they were not able to fulfill most of the promises and that initiative that they have started in 2017. So if next year you are going to have a deficit of 4.5% of GDP, then that would definitely mean that the door is being closed, and for that matter, it will be difficult for the budget to meet most of the initiatives that are stated in the budget.
But Honorable, some will say that let's look at the cycle of our financial year. Unlike previously when the budget was done running into the third month of the next year, look at the calendar. You can only work with figures up to July or September. Now, based on these numbers, aren't they being realistic with their targets and projections for next year?
No. We have the numbers that the minister himself is churning out from the budget. In fact, those that he
He's picking and choosing. For instance, the highlight here, you will see that the overall GDP is as at June. Then when you take the inflation, it's at the end of October. When you take budget deficit, it's at September. So he's picking and choosing which of these targets are favorable to him.
The Fiscal Service hasn't released the final updated figure for September in terms of GDP growth. Now, they would work with data that they have available. Don't you share in the same concern?
This is what we always do, that when the budget is coming to this house, the numbers that we churn out in the budget is always at the third quarter, September.
So that's the practice.
That's the practice. Why did he decide to choose June for overall GDP? And then for the non-oil GDP, June. Why? Why did he decide to use inflation as at end of October? Because it's a favorable target being achieved. So he's choosing and picking, that is so that the budget can look good.
Let me look to speak to your colleague for second year as well. They have described the budget as a 419. They described the budget as picking those cherries that taste nice and are good.
Not at all.
Why?
Because the figures that the finance minister gave Parliament today, clearly is not picking and choosing. He's picked the headline to suggest that because the headline indicators was made reference to a June figure, the minister is picking and choosing. But if you look at page 2 of the document that he's holding, it says overall GDP grew by 7.8 as of June against 2 period in 2016. It is estimated to grow by 9 end of 2007, up from the original forecast of 6.3. Is there? So to suggest that the minister is speaking and choosing, start with the truth.
When you look at the policy initiatives, with the 100,000 job proposed to be created, kind of contrast here because the same budget is complaining of the wage bill. So this job, is the government going to facilitate, or the government going to create the jobs? Because actually this kind of government says they believe in the private sector. So therefore there should be a policy whereby will allow the private sector to come on board and they make sure that they provide the kind of job. But if the government is saying he's going to create the job, it's kind of confusing here. How is he going to create the job? Because we need a detailed explanation on what they meant by that. Because we know that this particular government says the private sector should be the engine of growth. So therefore, if it's going to be business is going to be established to absorb those graduates, or those graduates, are they, their skills, are they meant for those jobs? I think the government needs to come out and explain very well how they are going to create those jobs for us. We'll be very glad if they can come and explain. Are they going to employ direct or not? I hope you understand. So let's look at how they'll come out with it and see. But I believe so far, so good. The budget is not that bad. Looking at the policies roll out, but there are so many questions to answer, especially when you come to one factory, one district. Still, they do not tell us exactly what type of dam are they going to construct, because we have a lot of dams.
Thank you. Doctor, please, we're ready for you.
Evidence is very clear that it's working. So we are scaling the whole thing in such a way that and where they See here, the central bank is putting GERSEL together. GERSEL is to give insurance cover to the commercial banks to be able to lend to the farmers. And this is something that has not been done before. The pilot this year is working. So in this budget, we have allocated 400 million to the central bank for them to give cover to the commercial banks, Agricultural Development, NIB, Ghana Commercial Bank, to lend to agriculture. So that is...
Hello.
Greg, and I have with me the minority spokesperson on finance, former Deputy Minister of Finance, Ato Forson. There's talk about 419. Before this budget, you spoke about the fact that there will be a tax on mobile money. We didn't hear the minister speak about that.
Let me first of all start by saying that for me, this budget is empty. For me, it's a bad package, bad product that is very much so deceptively packaged. I say this because, one, you will agree with me that this budget statement made certain assumptions that I find it very unfortunate. I was expecting to hear from the minister responsible for finance what the projection is going to be regarding debt to GDP. Obviously, he made reference to debt to GDP as at June and as at September. But that is not enough. I've come through the entire document. I've not seen where he's projecting the debt to GDP is going to be. I find it very unfortunate, and I think they should have. I say this because I'm sure the state is very much concerned about what the debt to GDP is going to be by the end of the year. And that is why they decided not to give the information to us as we speak. But I can say on authority that by end year December 2017, the debt to GDP will be in the range of 73.36%. I say this because if you look at where we are going, we cannot end the year with 68% if you fail to analyze it.
Saying that all the reprofiling and all those things that they are doing would not work?
No, the reprofiling you are making reference to is refinancing, and it's only going to affect interest payment. It is not going to affect the debt stock. It is not, the stock stays as it is, and the stock should be recognized as such, and does not necessarily mean that you are going to reduce the debt stock. Let me also point to one point. If you are to add the energy sector debt of 4.4, which the IMF and the World Bank have all agreed that should be part of the public debt, the debt to GDP can never be 68%. If you are to add, and I was surprised that the minister responsible for finance missed the wonderful opportunity to address the public and to let the public be aware that a liability in excess of 2 billion Ghana cedis is going to be borne by the taxpayer in a form of issuing a bond to Ghana Commercial Bank for the collapse of UT and Capital Bank. They decided to stay quiet about it.
More details, but one would say that before this budget, you said that they were going to tax mobile money. That was not captured in this budget. Does it raise certain issues about the minority, about certain things you say?
Let me say something. We mentioned that the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy should not be extended. Today they've extended it. We mentioned that the special import levy, the 2%, should not be extended. Today they've extended it. We've mentioned that the 2 billion that the taxpayer is going to pay as part of the UT and Capital Bank, he kept quiet about it. We mentioned that there's a possibility and that they should abort immediately in terms of the what we call the chop money tax. I'm proud and happy that at least the minister responsible for finance listened to us and they have withdrawn it. And clearly,
you believe that your press conference forced them to withdraw, because the perception we had from your conference was that it was going to be announced in this budget.
I told you that they should abort it immediately. And today, we are hearing that it didn't come. So they've aborted it. It's a clear sign that the government listened to us to a large extent. And you can see that if you look at the growth numbers, let me point you to one important point. The overall GDP growth for June, they estimated it to be 7.8. And they said that by end year, the growth is going to be 7.9, heavily driven by oil. You know what I see wrong here? Let me show you something. You are saying that it's heavily driven by oil. Look at the fiscal table. If you look at the fiscal table here, table 5 as part of the highlight, you will notice that tax revenue, particularly oil revenue, is underperforming by negative 14%. So how can something that is underperforming by negative 14% drive that growth and you exceed your target? Inconsistency. Inconsistency.
These are all projections and extrapolations that in terms of oil growth, are they actual numbers?
I am giving you in terms of the outturn as of September.
For September. I'm talking about going forward into next year.
I gave you outturn as at June.
Yeah, I am talking about the fact that aren't you convinced about their projections going into next year?
I'm not convinced.
Why aren't you convinced? Because several institutions, if you look at the World Bank, look at the IMF, you look at all the rating agencies, they have even forecasted a higher growth than what?
On the back of what?
Of oil, actually.
Yes, so if you are talking about growth, there are aspects of growth you talk about. You see, so it's important that you allow me to land. So I'm talking of non-oil growth. I'm talking of non-oil growth. They are projecting 5.4%. You are constraining expenditure to about 4.5% of GDP in terms of fiscal deficit. And you expect that to drive non-oil growth to 5.4%. Impossible. I don't know what are the drivers. So these are the questions that we are raising. And it's important that we raise the questions. But it's early yet. We are yet to go through the details. Hopefully, based on the information that I have, I'm not optimistic. I am not optimistic one bit. I see a budget that is empty. I see a budget that clearly that is not signaling hope to the ordinary Ghanaian. I say this, let me conclude. I say this because, one, our brothers and sisters who are importers of this country are complaining that as a result of introducing the paperless structure, the duties has risen astronomically. Today, we are aware that in the submission from the minister responsible for finance, he made a categorical statement that the economy has stabilized. So if you say the economy has stabilized, why are you keeping the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy? If you say the economy has stabilized, why are you keeping the 2% special import levy? It's important.
Just a brief second to hold on to get the Deputy Minister of Finance. She's in charge of budget. Madam, there have been questions about the data you've put across. There have been questions about data that reflect issues on the ground. 419 budgets, Wahala budgets. How do you respond to these concerns by the minority that you are not being sincere with the figures and the data you've put together about the performance of the economy?
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all your listeners. All I can say is that we based our figures on credible data, and the IMF is also aware of all the figures that we've churned out today. So one, as for the data credibility, I mean, it's
419 data being put on the
budget. There is nothing like producing false data, to prepare a neat budget. No, this is the actual data on the ground. And I just want to correct something that the former Deputy Minister said concerning the paperless. One, let me tell you that anytime we have to increase taxes, we bring it to the floor of Parliament for Parliament to approve. We haven't increased taxes. Rather, we have increased compliance through the paperless system. And so we haven't increased taxes. Now importers are paying the real taxes that they ought to pay. Remember, we said we were going to block the leakages and increase compliance. And this is exactly what we are doing. They were paying those monies, but those monies were going to somewhere else other than the government's account. So with the introduction of the paperless system, now government really gets what it's supposed to get. We haven't increased taxes. We haven't come to the floor of Parliament to increase taxes. So that is the point of correction there.
I know your shadow was sometimes in charge of the free SHS and all those things. There are some who maybe need to get the fine details, but they believe that we've still not seen those fine details on how to sustain the funding for the free SHS. You're setting up an educational fund, competing with Get Fund. Help us out in those fine details as in funding or sustaining the free SHS.
Thank you very much. I can assure every Ghanaian here today that for the free SHS, the funding is from Government of Ghana for 2018. We have fully funded the free SHS. I think it's to the tune of 1.3 million, and we have 1.3 billion. We have the funds for that. It is fully funded. We have fully funded most of our priority programs. So one, for the free SHS, be rest assured that we are going to implement it fully in 2018, as we have stated in the budget. Yes, we understand.
I wanted to see those details on how you're going to sustain it. There have been questions about the future of this program. What stopped the minister from giving us those details that X amount of funds will come from here, X amount of funds will come here? Rather, we get an indication that there will be an educational fund that could be competing with Get Fund.
Let me know. There's nothing like a fund competing with Get Fund. What we said is people have come up to us telling us that they really want to support this free SHS. And we believe that if we create a fund that people can go in there and pay in monies there, that is not something that the government is going to rely on. Government will fully fund free SHS as and when it is supposed to do it. And let me tell you that, yes, when we rolled out the free SHS in 2017, we are aware that there were some challenges, and government is working at it, especially in terms of infrastructure. And that is what current 2018 we are also going to focus on, to provide this infrastructure. We realize that there are several projects that were started 8 years ago, that we believe that if we should pump in some money to complete those projects, it will better serve the people of Ghana and the secondary.
I'll come back to you on your Ejuma budget and whether the programs and policies are enough to let us see that Ejuma that you're talking about. But Honorable Ebi Fuseni is a member of Parliament here, and thank you also for joining us in terms of our coverage of the 2018 budget. Ejuma budget, I saw you raising up the 419 label. Are you convinced that Ejuma, that job creation that we are looking forward to, will be realized starting from this year?
I know that my sister Abena has an unenviable job, because to defend the indefensible is actually a Herculean task. Look, go back and read the 2017 budget. What was the theme? Planting the seeds for jobs and growth. Do you remember it?
I do, but some would say that it has to start from somewhere, even if they planted the seed.
Planted dead seeds. Do you expect dead seeds to germinate? Go and ask the dead themselves. They cannot tell you how much jobs they recorded in 2017. Because far from even getting more jobs were shed. Because many of the things they put there were clueless. Look, to begin with, your two fundamentals of any budget, your revenue and expenditure.
But haven't they done well in the area of expenditure by containing?
If you have a huge gulf in the revenue generation of about 3 billion, that in itself already throws.
You are not convinced.
No, I'm telling you that.
No, the Juma, it won't happen. The jobs won't happen.
Total of empty promises that they were made. You are still in government and you are still making promises. You must be telling the good people of this country in 2017, as a result of the policies that we have initiated, these are the jobs we've created. You come and you are making more phantom promises.
Honorable, hold on about the promise. Let me get to your colleague MP as well. They think that it's 419. They think that you are not being sincere and all the rest. What do you make of these concerns by your fellow members of Parliament on this whole budget?
The outturn of 2017 budget has clearly entrenched the difference between MBP and NDC. NDC is brilliant at propaganda, and even in economic management, that is what they do. In 8 years, what the NDC failed to do in just 1 year, 2017 budget under the leadership of President Akufo-Addo has established. For instance, we inherited growth rate of 3.6 in the year 2016, which has been the lowest in almost 2 decades. And in year 2017, it is projected that growth is going to end at 6.3%, almost double what we inherited. Policy rate hovered around 25.5%, which has been reduced, drastically declined to 21%. That is good news for businesses. You see, the inflation has dropped from 14.1% to 11.6%. Deficit has been reduced from whooping 9.4% to 6.3%. This is brilliance. And what this has done is that having stabilized miraculously, having given macroeconomic and fiscal stability, it is going to be the foundation for growth. It's going to be foundation for businesses to thrive. Now, let me give you one typical example. The reality on the ground is the 17.5% VAT tax that was abolished on financial transactions will be in your pockets, will be in my pockets. The 17.5% tax that was abolished on domestic air tickets will be in the pockets of those who would use these domestic airlines. individuals. And the abolishment of the tax on import levy on drugs that are not locally manufactured will be in the pockets of those businesses. The abolishment of the carrier tax will be in their pockets.
And you are a member of parliament. If you engage your constituency seriously with respect to these policy measures, do you think that it has translated into their pocket?
When you set a very good macroeconomic stability, it reflects on businesses, it reflects on households, and it trickles down to individuals. Now, we've had the implementation of free SHS. This term alone, parents, over 390,000 students, whose parents in the past would have had to pay 1,500 cedis as fees. This budget has taken care of it. So that savings is in the pockets of households. So these are some of the real gains. The implementation of planting for food and jobs, for instance. The reduction.
Hold on. Let me get ABA Husseini's thought here. Realistically, if the numbers are stabilizing, if inflation is coming down, obviously it's impacting on your member of people in your constituency. And then why do you think that is not the reality on the ground?
They are simply disingenuous. Inflation was falling even before President Mahama left office.
Hasn't it gone down further if you look at it?
I'm telling you that, so don't claim that it is because your government is a part that inflation is
credit that they've done some things to help reduce the numbers.
You should have first acknowledged that even when they inherited a falling inflation. That is the point from which you should have started. My brother, but this macro, they are only meaningful in as far as they have a positive reflection on the lives of our people. Go to the various constituencies and talk to the people. Why are the data forces and others chasing them around? Because there are no jobs. They cannot provide jobs. If they say they have done as well as they have done, what are the jobs? Why is that up to now? People are crying all over. And in order to even find some very flimsy excuse of running away from that commitment, the minister comes and tells us that they are getting graduates 100,000 jobs. You see, you haven't been able to finish wrestling with Peter. You are looking for Paul. The old figures that you have to contend with. And let me just tell you, the minister also released some very farcical figures. Look at the debt to GDP ratio. Go back and read the document. He said June. And we're talking about the whole year. So just half of the data for half of the year has been released. According to documents that we have perused from the IMF, the government has a standing arrangement with the IMF. Debt to GDP is going to 76%. And that is why we want that. We're on the threshold because they are recklessly borrowing.
So we'll wait till the end.
Getting in reckless borrowing, which is creating all this problem. In 10 months, never in the annals of our country's history have you had a reckless government borrowing in this kind of manner.
Thank you so much.
Go and really look down. Not a single infrastructure has been instituted. What have they been borrowing to do? To pay salaries. How can you generate the requisite level of growth when you are borrowing to pay salaries? It's not. So this is a spendthrift government. A government of 110 ministers. Extravagant, wasteful, expensive government. They cannot do anything.
Thank you so much, Honorable A.B. Husseini. And of course, this is our coverage for the 2018 budget here in Parliament, where we are engaging the members of Parliament to get their views on this 2018 budget. What are their expectations? What do they make of this budget as well? So I've still been